Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode. I am Michael Petro, and joining me on the show is actor, Philadelphia Eagles fan, and writer Dean Simone, ladies and gentlemen. We met online. He is promoting his new film, Game Day. What is Game Day about, you ask? Well, it is a story about a raw, humorous, and emotionally gripping film about an Italian-American family from Philadelphia who gather every Sunday to watch their beloved Philadelphia Eagles. But on this Sunday, where the Eagles play the Cowboys, each quarter as the game unfolds, arguments, fights, and bitter realizations arise within this family, exposing deep divisions and rivalries that can turn child against parent, husband against wife, with grandparents and siblings battling it out until the very bitter end. The question we ask, who will win? Co-written by Philadelphia native Dean Simone and directed by Edgar Bravo, Game Day is a story about our time and family that fights passionately among themselves but never gives up on each other. Dean, you know I love this movie. If you want to see it after we're done having this lovely conversation, you can too. There'll be notes. All the show notes will have a way for you to watch it. If you're in the States, it is on Amazon Prime streaming there. Unfortunately, us Canadians don't have access to it yet. Never fail. We will make sure you can see it. We talk about Dean's career, how he started, what he loves about acting, the theater, the Philadelphia Eagles, how he's got some, his DNA is actually all over that football team, and lots more. So that's who's on the show this week, ladies and gentlemen. I have no news for you. ReelDebaters.ca. If you want to follow us, listen to the end of the show. There's a little end credit trailer there for you on how to stay involved in all the things Reel Debaters. So that's it. That's Dean Simone. This is a good time, ladies and gentlemen. I will cue the reel, and you enjoy the show.
Let's tidy up this tangle of film by putting it on a reel. Here is a motion picture film, 1,000 feet, 16,000 separate photographs.
Welcome, everybody, to the official space section of the chart.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Sir, you're out of order. Out of order? I show you out of order!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Reel Debaters production. You've just got me today. All the guys, I gave them the day off. I sent them packing, go watch some new shit, come back, we'll talk about it next week. Today, though, I have a very special guest who I am meeting for the first time. It's been a lovely experience using Matchmaker.com, which is a podcasting app that puts podcasters and potential guests in touch with each other. And Dean Simone, who's on the show today, reached out to me, and I was like, fuck yes, of course we'll have you on. And he's got a new film called Game Day, and I got to watch it. And it's such a treat to watch, and we're going to talk about it today. But before we get into his most recent project, we want to know the person we're talking to. And as mentioned in our previous episodes, we love a good origin story. So first of all, Dean, thank you for coming on the show.
I had to be here. Happy to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, I was thrilled once I looked at your resume. I was like, wow, we get like you. I'm very excited to talk about where you've been and where you are right now with your career. So let's start where it all started. Let's get the Wolverine on you, the origin story. How did you find yourself wanting to be an actor?
Well, I mean, growing up, I grew up in the Philadelphia area. We moved around a lot, but we always kind of came back to Philly. But I was really into sports and football when I was growing up. I thought like, oh man, I was going to be a pro football player. That was my whole thing. But as fate would have it, I ended up being small but slow. There's not a whole lot of 160-pound centers playing pro football. So that was it for the football career. And I was always a musician, and I was always completely into movies and all that stuff. I never thought about actually being an actor. But then as I was in high school and, playing football, and that was clearly winding down with no future involved, I had a phenomenal teacher, Mr. Hildebrand. I will never forget him. And we took his drama class, just like to meet girls, and in lieu of home ec.
That's why I took dancing and choir, Dean. I did it for the exact same reason.
Yeah, it's just got a good,
like
great life. That's right, man. So I took the class, and I liked it, and I was doing pretty well in it. And he said to me, "Look, if I give you the lead in the play this year, will you commit to doing it?" And which meant that I couldn't be a shitty member of the track and field team because I sucked equally at that. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then it was like, I loved it from that point on. And literally it went from there to community theater, to professional theater, to film, to television, commercials, the whole 9 yards.
That's where I got bit by a bug too. I didn't take it further, but I loved musical theater. I loved dancing when I was a kid, singing, choir, all the stuff that allowed you to be the loudmouth, the punk, the all the variations you couldn't be in math class, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a great extension to get all that energy out and have fun. And I never had a problem making an ass out of myself. So
You're a man after my own heart. Same way.
what was the play?
The play was The Man Who Came to Dinner, which was this sort of comedy of manners about a film critic that gets stuck in, I believe, Ohio. And there was a movie version of it too. Betty Davis was in it, and I played the man who got stuck there, who's kind of this like uppity New York film critic who's stuck in this one-horse town, and he's humbled by the entire experience, and discovers his humanity within it. It's actually a really classic play, and it's a pretty cool little film if you want to go check it out. I think it's like 1941 or 42, something like that. So it's
it's a golden age of cinema.
Yeah, for sure. So that was it.
I did Bye Bye Birdie, which has got. I wonder if it was done around the same. It might have been done around the same time when it was on Broadway, because Bye Bye Birdie is about a rock star who comes to a small podunk town and takes over the town, and it's an Elvis-like character. It's when Elvis went off to the war, so that comedy of errors, I think, was easy for high school kids to digest because it was just making a mockery of something.
That's Anne Margaret, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have a lot of useless film information in my brain, which you'll see will come out in the course of our discussion. Man, I've watched far too many films, so
we had a game night here last night, and we played a movie trivia game, and it got to the point where I had to answer 4 questions for everybody's one, because it was unfair. Like, they weren't in the question, and I was like, Harvey Milk. It was, so I sympathize. A pirate sees a pirate, man. I think we might go down a rabbit hole today, ladies and gentlemen, and completely fall off track. So be ready. But theater is that a traditional launch pad for a lot of actors because it is in high school, or is there something that pulls everybody to theater first? Because all the greats, man, including yourself, now you've all done theater before you went to the big screen. Is there a reason?
Well, I think it's accessible when you're living in Marietta, Georgia, or you're living in, Chagrin Falls, Ohio. You can do theater. It's there for you. Well, now I think it's a little different for younger people because, like, my 14-year-old he's in high school, and they're doing huge film productions in high school. But for me, my age range, your age range, I think theater was kind of like what we really had. So it was really a great chance to get your feet wet and get into it. Also, I think that we grew up watching actors and listening to actors and studying directors, whether it was people like Elia Kazan or Mike Nichols and Elaine May. They all had these theater backgrounds. So we were always like, Brando started in theater. So we always felt like, oh, theater must be where you have to go to not suck. I was like happy to jump in, man. And I got really lucky, Michael. I had some like really great teachers. I went to the American Academy. I was there for a year, and I was going to get invited back, but then it was like, I was starting to get work as an actor, getting work offered to me. And I was just like, what do I need this education thing for? I'm going to be an overnight success. And it's been a long fucking year, Michael. So it was just like, riding that fucking year out. But I met this phenomenal teacher. He was this guy, Don Richardson, and he was this old school guy, and he directed everything from Bonanza to One Day at a Time, like one of these phenomenally cool dude, old Hasidic Jewish man. He literally had the hat and the curls, and he was phenomenal. He directed all these people, and he really liked me and took me under his wing, and I learned so much from him. And he was always, it's about theater. You got to stick, whether you do plays, TV, film, whatever you do, keep going back to theater. So I wish I would have taken his advice. Unfortunately, I didn't. I kept doing film and commercials.
Hey, man, as we all do it. We're like, yeah, no, I know better. I'm full of young, dumb, and piss and vinegar and all that, all those metaphors and analogies, right? And then now I'm like, why didn't I start podcasting 15 years ago when it was an unknown thing? But whatever, you catch up, right? Gives you more time to play hard in the paint because you know yourself at this point.
Well, you do it good, Michael, and that's all that matters, man. Because
Oh, thank you, sir.
yep.
Uh, I look at theater as somebody who, because everything I know from movies. So I look at theater as the classically trained, and then you look at somebody who packs up, rolls up a steak, and heads off to Hollywood, the old story, who's completely untrained. It's like classical guitar versus noodling and picking up and creating on the fly, right? Like you ask Dave Grohl doesn't know notes, he just knows how to play.
Right.
And I feel that maybe the theater gives clout. Maybe it's raw, it's pure, it's there in person. Everybody's experiencing it for real instead of the screen separating the experience. So maybe that's where the respect and the admiration comes from, perhaps. Like it gives you that je ne sais quoi, that classically trained feel that then gives you a launch pad to get into other things.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the one thing about theater is, when you're film is basically like, when somebody watches film, and like I said, I'm a film fanatic. I'm nuts about it. I love it. I watch it all, any chance I can get, I'll watch any film. But, you're basically watching a moment and you're witnessing a moment, and it's amazing. Theater, you are part of the moment. You're like actually there, and you're like, oh, I witnessed it. I saw that when Jose Ferrer went up on his lines in 1968 in this production of blah blah blah, and that experience for you is going to be an individual experience that only the other 3,000 people in the theater experienced with you. Film is a different thing. Film is something that you capture, it's there, and we witness it more, and we can get deeper with it, more intimate, jump into it more. But you can't get more intimate per se than actually being there. And I think that's why theater is still like amazing. And it's great. I wish I could do more. If I could only remember my fucking lines, I would do a whole.
And I mean, there it is, right? Like the pressure, like on a set, wherever you are, you can be like, all right, back to one, and have enough and get some chances to capture it. But you're locked in. You're in the zone. You're on the ride with everybody else. So yeah, everything that happens, good or bad, happens to everybody, good or bad.
It does. And I'm also a musician and a singer. I play in a band, and for some reason, it's much easier to memorize lyrics or chord progressions for me. Sometimes if something's really well written, I can memorize it like that. But if something's a little funky or shaky, it's really difficult. And it's amazing. I mean, I look at the plays that I did when I was younger, and there was copious amounts of dialogue and monologues and things. And man, I would be like, memorize them like that. Now it's like I slate for an audition, and I'm like, hi, my name is Dean Simone.
I'd hire you in the spot if you pulled that trick out. What's my name?
Exactly. Dean Line.
Yeah, man, the best experiences I had in anything I ever did in high school always came to the theater. We spent one night, we actually slept over in the theater to do a rehearsal, and like that, just you get something tangible. I think like I love A Few Good Men. It's one of the best movies ever made. One of the best courtroom dramas to go down. One of the most quotable Jack Nicholson movies ever.
Yep.
But I've seen the play, and I have two different experiences. I have a moment in time that's captured on the film that goes over and over and over and does not change. But like you said, if you were, it's like baseball. If you were there when Babe Ruth hit the home run during the World Series, only you in the room get to experience it, where we all have the same Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. That doesn't change.
Right.
And also, being Aaron Sorkin, who wrote the damn thing, like the dialogue in that experience was where I actually started to.
He's pretty good. He does an okay job.
Yeah, he's okay writer. Yeah.
Have you seen Being the Ricardos?
No, I have not.
It's funny that you bring him up. I have not gotten a chance to work on something that he's done. I have done David Kelley stuff before. Yep. But it's amazing when people talk about him. It's like Shakespeare. It's like you have to absolutely adhere to literally. You can't say cannot. Like you can't say can. It's like you have to say cannot. It's crazy, man. It's like to the nose.
His pacing is part of the process. His enunciation is part of the process. Where most writers, they write it so that it gets to the screen, and then of anybody, it changes, right? Like if
Absolutely.
it because it's one dimensional. Now we're going into 3 dimensions, and the math changes on this. But for him, it's like, no, start to fucking finish. I need
Right.
it to be this, or goes diva. And
Absolutely. And it's got that old school vibe to it where there's quite a bit of dialogue. And I think it has that rhythm, like, the old 30s and 40s movies. They moved at a pretty good pace. Of course, you're talking about scripts that were almost a couple hundred pages long because they were so dense in dialogue that those actors had to get through it, With Sorkin, it's like a whole different thing, but you can feel his presence there as a writer, and he's a brilliant writer, not just dialogue, but in everything. The way the story is laid out, theme, structure. I mean, he's phenomenal. But I think he also, though, within the structure of what he does with dialogue, the actors can still be the actors, whether it's Rob Lowe on West Wing or it's Bardem playing Ricky Ricardo and being the Ricardos. He allows them to be them within the constraints of what's going on. Whereas you look at a guy like Woody Allen, who obviously has a lot of shit going on now, but back in the day, I mean, it's so funny if you watch Woody Allen movies, and I was, a fan of his work. I was a fan of his work.
That's you separate the two.
Cancel here on your show, Michael.
No, it's fine.
But when you watch actors doing his stuff, they always are trying to do Woody Allen imitations, which I find to be like, it's hilarious. And I wonder if he directs them in that way. It's just people that you wouldn't at all think are like him. And then all of a sudden, they're, going, I just have to, and they're glasses that aren't even there. And, they're doing the whole Woody Allen thing. It's like, dude, you're Edward Norton. Why are you acting like Woody Allen?
Be you. That's why you're here, right? Don't be a representation of what you think through. I totally get it.
Owen Wilson did, though, in Midnight in Paris. He was Owen Wilson. God bless him. He did not act like Woody Allen, and he did it.
No, I get it. Right.
Exactly. He has his own thing going on, man.
Yeah. No, it's Marvel movies. I like doing Marvel with Tom Hiddleston.
Exactly. I love that dude. It's the best.
Yeah, no, it's a tough thing to do. Like the guy himself is a piece of shit, but the work that came out of the piece of shit, I look at through very protected glasses, but nonetheless, I don't want to not look at it because there are memorable moments in cinema that were created by him. Unfortunately, they're just tainted.
And isn't that the difficult thing too now, is separating the man from the work. And this is a very, very hard thing. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have been questionable people that have done brilliant work. Then the work gets lost sometimes because the person is such a piece of shit and what they've done is so reprehensible. That's the tough thing, but what are you going to do?
I think that debate always needs to happen, though. It's been you shouldn't not have the debate. You should just move the goalposts a bit so that there's more room to have it. Like, I don't believe in moving goalposts in any scenario. Like, make a deal. But like in this regard, like, we've evolved. Cinema has changed. We are having conversations, and I get to go after their personal choices and demonize them for that. That is a right and just society. But if you are to take away some of the conversations that they may have had on some very hard topics to have, if you remove them from the ether, you can't have them anymore. And it's good to have a hard conversation while at the same time recognizing the faults of those involved. But then if to not have it at all, those coming behind us won't be able to see it. They won't be able to question it and make those decisions for themselves.
Yeah, that is very true. And we live now, not just, America takes the rap for this, but I do think this is sort of a global situation. We are, as a people, 7 billion strong, we are like obsessed with celebrity, and so when you as a people are so obsessed with celebrity, that's how you get a reality show guy as your president, and and different things like that can occur. But I think because we are so obsessed with celebrity that we have this sort of expectation or forgiveness of people that have done pretty bad things, and we start to worship the messenger instead of the message. And I think,
Yes.
that's the difficult thing. But to Woody, God bless him, his psycho self, he has made some really amazing movies, and I am appreciative of those movies. So,
When did you when did after theater? Like, was there any before we touch on to where you started to make decisions to do this professionally, because that's obviously a big step in any actor's career, to be like, okay, I'm going to suffer massive amounts of rejection and I'm going to do it mindfully. We'll get into that, but any more plays that you did that really stuck out for you that made you kind of go, I'm going to bite the actor bug for real? Was there a moment in any of your plays, or did that come later?
you know, I was at a repertory theater, the San Diego Rep, and at the time, my dad was a corporate guy, and he'd gotten offered to run a company down in Texas, and I just really had no desire to move to Texas at that stage. I was 18. I was in this theater company. I was doing stuff, and I was doing a play called Noon, which was a really fun sort of spoof on westerns, and it had musical elements to it, and it was a great role. I played the young cowboy, and that was the name of the role. But it was like three cowboys: young cowboy, old cowboy, and the gunslinger. And it was just a great, really creative play. And I'll never forget, my dad got the call about running this company in Dallas, and I was just like, I'm out. I'm going to do this play. I'll never forget it too, because at the time there was a group of improv actors that opened the show called, I believe they were called Tag, of which Whoopi Goldberg was one of the people in it.
Fuck
And
yeah.
she was phenomenal, man. And we would like watch her from the wings and just go, wow, she's pretty good. It was like, and I think at that stage, that's when the bug super really, really kicked in, that I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to try to do that. I'm not going to Texas. So I think that was the point where the decision was made for me. And the play was getting good reviews, and we were doing well. And it was very avant-garde theater company, a lot of ex-hippies and, just insanity, like those companies were just crazy and free, and a lot of like stuff going on. And I was like right off the boat from Atlanta at that time, and I was really blown away by it. But that was the point. That was the moment where I definitely was, I'm going to keep going with this, and I'm going to head up north to LA. And that's what I did.
So you get to LA. What's the first year like? What did you experience that you were like, oh shit? And then what did you experience where you were like, okay, I got this? Like, did you come with any tools that prepared you for the experience, or was it all just like shock and awe and blitzkrieg?
No, I think, that's one great thing about being 18, and I was 18 at the time. If you go and do something, and you're 55, your viewpoint is quite a bit different at 18. You are more willing to just jump in both feet and say, hey, I'm going to go for this and do it. I did get in the American Academy. I had auditioned for Juilliard, American Academy, Carnegie Mellon, and there was one other, Cal Arts. And I got accepted into all of them but Carnegie Mellon. And Juilliard was definitely something that I was really considering, like thinking, maybe I do this, but I opted to come up here in LA to go to the American Academy. And that made it easier because, as I said earlier, I had met Don Richardson, and I have some friends to this day still that were in that class with me. In fact, one of the announcers in Game Day, which we'll talk about later, was a guy that I went to school with at the American Academy. We've remained friends and done things together for years. So I think that took a little bit of the bite out of it, Michael, because I think it was like I was at school, but I was also breaking the American Academy rule, because I had an agent and I was getting sent out, and I was working, and I was trying to work on the sly, and you're not supposed to do that. And then it got to a point where I was working enough that I really did have to make a decision.
How come you can't feed your passion and your art while you're trying to learn it?
That was the rule at the time.
Really?
Rule at the time, yeah. I don't know if it's still that way, but at the time it was like you have to, be here or not be here. And that's too bad, because I love the experience of it, and I have nothing but positive things to say about the school. I learned a ton at the school. I was doing that, and I was also playing in bands at the time. And that was when punk rock and all that was really
Glam rock, punk rock, probably.
yeah, it was hitting hard here at that point, and there was a lot of that going on, and I was part of that scene and doing that. And I'll tell you something else about those days, Michael, was there was a lot of, you got to choose, are you an actor or are you a musician, or what are you going to be? I think that was a very odd place to be. But I'll tell you a funny story. I was the final decision about leaving the academy. I auditioned for this movie, great role, playing this teenage kind of foster home kid who gets himself into some kind of trouble at this house that he's living in. And I got my SAG card out of that, and it was called Hidden Music. And the director of that is the director of Game Day.
Oh, full circle.
Full circle.
Cool.
Yeah, really cool, man. And we remained friends and talked to each other. I mean, we would lose, track of each other over the years every now and again. But at any rate, yeah. So that was it for me. Once that happened, I was like, I'm just going to run for this. After I did Hidden Music, I got signed to William Morris. And that was interesting. That was like, you get TV roles and you would get guest starring roles, but I was going up to readings literally, and Sean Penn was there and Tom Cruise was there, and there was like these, but they weren't big stars at the time. They were other actors just banging their way at it like me, and they were getting the roles, and at that time I wasn't. So William Morris was kind of like, what's wrong with you, man? Who's this guy that's getting the role over you? It's like,
yeah,
that's the competition of it.
Yeah, and I mean, competition breeds competition. It is an environment that requires the auditioning, unfortunately and fortunately. Like, it's a double-edged sword, I would imagine, for you, because it does do its process and it keeps you sharp, but at the same time, it at the end of the day, auditioning for anything, be it a role or a job audition, is just as much as a movie audition. Like, you're on the spot. It's not a friendly environment. What, like, so you're coming, would that be around the 80s that you're coming up, right around that?
It's like 84, 85, like in and around there.
So like Motley Crue, LA Sunset Strip, and then like the epitome of 80s actordom. Like that's like the boom, I guess, essentially that's happening around you, right?
It was. And for me, I was more in the alt scene and the punk scene, and then there was that scene, like Motley Crue and oh gosh, I mean, there were so many bands, LA Guns, and then there were bands like Guns N' Roses, and there was a club out here called Scream, and we opened for Guns N' Roses, we opened for Jane's Addiction. Dave Navarro was my guitar tech. Right. And that was funny, like he's guitar teching for me, and he could like play left-handed better than I could play, right? But he was a kid, like a really young guy at the time, and then he zoomed right past us. But yes, the scene was going. There was a desire to like want to express yourself, the way you look, your clothes, and that was not going over super well at William Morris for me. When I showed up to have a meeting with my agent, and I was like, literally had a faux hawk with like red streaks through my hair. This is the truth. And I just remember my agent, Mike Simpson, on there, super good guy. He just looked at me like, yeah, you can't do this. You have that. And, but that was the world I was living in, and you had to straddle it. And there was people that did and straddled it better than I did. But so what I ended up doing was I would go back and forth. I would invest in acting for a couple of years and look more conservative and more like the actor. And then I would invest in music for a couple of years and be in that world. And unfortunately, it was hard.
There was some duality required. I sympathize. Like I look like I could go outside and chop lumber by, being stereotypical. I've got the puppet sock sweater and the big beard, but like I come from painted nails, pink shoelaces, faux hawks, nail polish. Like what you paved for people like me is what I was a part of too. And then I'd have to cut it to go to work, right? Because you can't show up and serve people with eyeliner on. Like it just didn't just didn't click. So in your world, I get that it's like it's amplified, but I sympathize with what you're saying. Like, why do I have to choose? Why can't I just why can't I just be? And if acting is what acting is, which is being a bunch of things, then why can't I be this and then be that when I have to be?
Yeah, it was a crappy place for my generation and your generation to be in. Now, my son who's 14, and my son who's in his mid-20s, he's like they don't have to make those choices. Yeah, it's now it's like totally. And I still play in bands. And the funny thing about it, Michael, is the band, and now it's a cover band that we just like it's a really terrific band. We're called the Smoking Cobras, and we have played literally Dodger Stadium. We've played in Tokyo. It's taken me all around the world to do it. And I still do it. And I love it. And I love the guys in my band. We've been together for a long time. And no matter, I've been fortunate enough that my acting career has really picked up in the last 10 years. And now with the filmmaking and all that going on. But they know I'll always do the music too. And thankfully, thank you, Lord, I don't have to make those choices anymore. I can do both.
That's so great. And like, art is art is art.
Yeah.
I don't go, well, music's not as artistic as film, and film isn't as artistic as painting or drawing. No, art is art. Expression is expression.
Yeah.
At the end of it and move on. So, okay, so we're in LA and this crazy scene is just booming all around you. What's your first big role? What's your first big memory? Like your ta-da, kind of like, I can do this, because jumping from community theater, which no discount, but it's the next level, right? And the imposter syndrome and maybe all those things start kicking in, and but then please come work with us. We'd love to work with you. Where does that start?
Well, I mean, William Morris really, was a big thing to sign with them, and that was a big step. Doing the movie with Edgar Bravo, it was a really great movie, and he's a really talented guy. So that felt like a real legit thing, because that was like a lead role, weeks working on it, and that was him. But I think probably just later that year, I had started really moving into doing the sitcoms. So I was on Facts of Life. I was on, I played Joe's boyfriend in Facts of Life. I was in a series with Anthony Edwards and Helen Hunt. I played Helen Hunt's boyfriend. I was working with people like Richard Crenna and Patty Duke and these old stars. I met Danny Thomas, all these old school.
Like Rambo Richard Crenna?
Yes, Rambo Richard Crenna.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and at the time I was in a very, very contentious but passionate marriage, and I would just show up like, and Anthony Edwards was actually at that time my best friend in town. We were very tight. We hung out every day, and Anthony Edwards would share some of the marital battles that my wife at the time and I were going through. And I'll never forget, I showed up one day on the set, and Richard Crenna sits down with me, and he's like, "This is no good. This is no good for you. You can't do that." And I'm like, wow, Rambo's dude is telling me this is no good. I got to listen to my commander. Well, I did listen. I stayed married for another 15 years, whatever it was. But at any rate, yeah, that was the moment, I think, when I really started seeing like, wow, that's Patty Duke. Like that's the miracle worker. She played Helen Keller, it's like, that's, it's amazing when you start to meet people. I met Scatman Crothers, or, Danny Thomas was the producer of one of the shows. And, you meet people like that, and you do scenes opposite of them, and you're involved with them in something. And dude, it is mind blowing. I mean, it is pretty crazy. So I think it hit me at that point when I started doing some of the sitcoms and being involved with some of those stars that I never in a million years thought that I would be involved with. And then it kind of hits you like, oh, wow, this is on, it's actually happening. So it was great.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think it, like, you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, I was pulling cord one day and now I'm doing scene work with Patty Duke. And the surreality of it is that you're a fan, but at the same time you're an actor and you have a craft, and you want to do well, and then so you're competing with the fanboy and you're the fangirl in you to then get over it. And I think that's the biggest hump for, like, once you're over that, I would imagine you'd be like, okay, I've done this, blank this, I was there, and you build that resume, right?
Yeah, and I think to your point of imposter syndrome, I think there's there's the angel on one shoulder is going, "Huh, man, you're here, you're doing it, and they're enjoying your work and they're giving you positive feedback, and you're here, you're living it." And then the devil is sitting there going, "You're acting with Patty Duke. Are you kidding me? Are you acting with Richard Crenna? You're acting with Helen Hunt." Or, at the time, Helen Hunt and Anthony were just they were new. They weren't huge stars themselves.
We don't have ER. We don't have Helen Hunt's Blonde. We don't Twister. All these things.
It's pretty as good as it gets. Yeah, exactly. But she still was terrific then, as was Anthony, and it was great. And I can't ever say that I felt like I didn't fit. I think there was a certain element, just because of my age and because of my background, which the movie touched on, I think, where I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it's like something you had mentioned earlier, and you were really, really on the mark about it, is, these things occur, these ups and these downs, and oh my God, I got this part, it's so amazing. And then, oh my God, I didn't get this part, I must really suck. And you're going up and down and, riding that train. You get to be my age at this stage of the game right now, and you really don't ride it that way. I mean, you're happy every time that you do something that you feel is worthwhile and you feel is really good. If you do something that's shitty, you're just like, well, that's a shitty thing, but I got to keep the lights on in the house, so I'm going to do it. And I think that you don't get as high with the highs and as low with the lows, and you certainly don't define yourself by it anymore, because if you do, man, you are going to end up just a frigging basket case if you define yourself by what's going on at the given moment. It's not good. It's very difficult.
It's a perfect train ride to bad mental health, and I think the like, I like the term working actor. I've never seen it as something, and I've said it before, and people have been like, well, you're an actor or you're a working actor. No, grinding out in any job happens at certain points. It's not all hits, and that's what the TV does, or the Instagram page does, is it convinces you that everything you see is a hit, and not everything has to be a hit, because when the hit does come, you'll need all of those moments of practice to really bring it to that moment. So yeah, looking at it through, all right, I was up at the plate, didn't work, fine. In your world, I was on the 3-yard line, right? Like, we didn't get it over. All right, reset back to 50, and you don't take it as hard.
No, and it's like Bob Dylan says, the game is the same. It's just up on another level. That's what you realize that it is. And you realize that you could be Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise is sitting there looking and going, Brad Pitt's, he made more money than me this year, or Brad got nominated. Brad won an Oscar for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I haven't won an Oscar in a long time. What's going on with me? They're still competing. They're sitting in that room looking across from each other, going, who's going to get it? It doesn't change. But I do think that what those guys are able to do, and what hopefully, just working actors like myself, who have been blessed enough to be able to stay in the game and make a living at it, we just realize that we're not defined by the up or the down. We're
just by the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, and that's what it always should be. Like, I heard a quote. I'm totally gonna botch it for all the listeners out there, but they know that I do this all the time on the show. But I think it's like, it's the sweet and the sour from Vanilla Sky, right? You can't appreciate, you don't have perspective. If everything's a hit, man, you're going to be a piece of shit to deal with. Right? Because you don't know when the other shoe drops and things are going to go sour on you.
Yeah, it's like Patton Oswalt has that very famous quote, tongue-in-cheek quote, where he says, I want to be so famous that I never have to hear the truth again.
Yeah.
Okay, that tongue in cheek when he said it, and I think that's part of it. Certainly not a fear in my life. I live multi-generational household, been married to the same amazing person for 20 years, have kids, have parents. I have plenty of grounding on a daily basis. But in terms of my career, oh my God, we could talk. Literally, it could be a 4-hour podcast of highs and lows. To your original question, there were so many of them and so many different times when I thought, that I made it, or, oh my God, this is it, or, but as David Bowie said, the taste was not so sweet. It's true. You're like, this is it. It's like, no, it's not. And I would be like waiting tables in 2 more years, like here I am waiting tables going. And I'll tell you, here's a super humbling experience.
Please.
I was waiting tables and Helen Hunt came in, and I had to wait tables on Helen Hunt after playing her boyfriend television show. Yeah.
That's actually I've seen that in the Slam and Salmon does that exact play-by-play of a guy who left, went and did a show, told everybody to fuck off, walked out in a blaze of glory, and then the cast he was working with got fed up with him, so they fired him, and then they all came to the restaurant he was working at. Like that, I imagine that's an LA story.
I'm sure I am not the only person that has ever endured that, but I can remember, and she was so gracious and sweet and extremely nice. As I was asking her if she wanted cheese on that, Swiss or cheddar, would you like on that?
But that keeps you so that when you do work across Billy Bob Thornton, or you do work across somebody, it keeps you in check. It doesn't let you get too high into the clouds and too low into the dust. And was your experience with Billy Bob with Goliath? Am I wrong on that, or is that?
Well, I wasn't in the same room with Billy Bob, though he was there and around when I was shooting. I was actually, here's another Hollywood nightmare story. I was actually the first shot on the first day of Goliath was me. I booked the job on Wednesday. This is like perfect Dean Simone situation. I booked the job on Wednesday, and I still don't have a script, but it's David E. Kelley, and he's very protective of the script and all that stuff. So we've alluded to my mastery of remembering script and lines. Yeah. And so Wednesday I book it. Thursday I have no script. They tell me I'm shooting on Friday. I'm playing an embattled CEO whose company's being taken over, and I knew there was a decent amount of dialogue because in the audition there was pretty.
I've seen you in it, man. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and dude, I'm like not getting the script. Finally, they send me the script, and it's 7 pages of dense dialogue that reads like
War and Peace.
Like War and Peace, like Tolstoy's, notes or something. Yeah, and I'm like, I call my agent and I'm like, yeah, listen, there's no fucking way I can do this. Like my brain will not retain this. And she's like, well, how much is it? I'm like, it's like way more than my brain can do. And she's like, let me call them and see what's going on. So she calls, the director assures, oh, no, it'll be fine. No problem. He'll be like reading a report to these people sitting in a boardroom, but he can read off the report, and we'll be cutting in and out back to Billy Bob, who's sitting in the other room watching me make this hostile takeover report. Anyway, we get there, do a couple takes, and the director goes, you know what? I just feel like this guy, he's a maverick. He'd just like let this roll. I don't think he'd be reading off the paper. I think he knows this stuff. And then I shit in my pants, and it was like, dude, it was so difficult. And it was one of those moments because it came in with a lot of fanfare, the role, and it was like really, really, really rough. I think it was just one of the most difficult things. And we shot it at the new William Morris. Isn't that like,
oh, the irony?
Yeah, and this boardroom literally, dude, is like a football field, and there's stands in this boardroom all around, and it's filled with extras. As I'm sitting here, totally shitting the bed, trying to remember my lines, man. So,
which season is this? I know, is this 2?
First season.
First season. Yes,
yeah. So I ended up being just like my little blurb is on the is on the thing because and. I think about all the nightmares that I went through with it, but I was like looking at it and thinking to myself, it cannot get much worse than this in terms of having an expectation to do something and having this amount of dialogue hit you. But again, back to our thing, I booked it on my birthday. I'll never forget. And I was, oh my God, this is the greatest. And I'm going to work with Billy Bob and all this kind of stuff. You just never know, man. You never know how it's going to be or what it's going to be and where it's going to go from when you get it to when it's done.
So which is the beauty of the ride. right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
like it would, again, if it was all written out and properly planned, well, that's no fun. When you don't have somebody drop a dump truck of dialogue on you and expect you to dance like a marionette, like just like nobody with, unless a severe Adderall addiction, could probably touch half of that. Like it just doesn't. I know memorization tricks from doing choir and such, and you just no. I don't have a computer to fucking do this.
what
Let's talk about when you have time to develop a character. What's your process? How do you like? Is there a cookie cutter approach, and then you kind of morph it into whatever you're doing? Do you scrap it and approach it differently? Like what's in your toolbox?
Well, it's gotten better now because roles are getting larger and I'm able to actually play characters. The hardest thing is when you get the 5 and unders, and literally you've got to make the character real and make the character be something, but there's nothing to glom onto, and you can't overdo it because they don't want to see somebody stretching 5 lines out, like it's Macbeth, when it's really just, it ain't Macbeth. And the role certainly isn't Macbeth. When it's now like meteor parts and things that what I try to do is I look at the role and I think to myself, who is this guy? Do I know this guy? And usually I try to identify who it is. Is it, my uncle Claudie? Is it, my 3rd grade teacher? Is it my coach from my junior year in high school? Is it, I try to see who I think it is. Is this the guy I played in a band with back there? Whatever the situation might be, I try to get a feel for who I feel in my life this character was, even if their backstory wasn't maybe the same per se, and that they live the same life, but maybe they're the same character, the same type. So I try to really dive into the person that I know and bring that thought process to it. And then I let all of that go and I let it be me, and I keep it in here, and I just try to be in the moment with it, with all of that back study that I've done, and being able to access the character. Because I love playing characters. I love mimicking, people, and, I'm into that stuff. But at a certain point, you can't turn it into an impersonation. At some point, you just have to like make it like, okay, it's this guy. And then you have to make it this guy, you know what I'm saying? Where it's part of who you are. So that's how I basically go at it. But it's good to know because it gives you an idea about the hair and the look and the clothes and the vibe. And you can make suggestion to wardrobe. And I'd like to try to do this, or I'd like to try to do that. And the accent, which is another big part of it.
Dialogue.
Huge part of it.
Yeah. I see you said something, and yeah, okay, the 5 and unders, right? We're talking like 5 lines or less. Is that what you're getting? Okay.
Yeah.
You made a really interesting point, but I even go, well, no, those are important. It's just the intensity of which they are played. So you can have your principles and you're above the line, right? Primary. But everything is important to the story, because if it's crazy that all of these things get put into a picture and you don't realize it because there's your backdrop and your foredrop and your primary and all that. But all it takes is one thing to fall out of line for it to become fake and noticeable. And with that said, you can do that much damage with 100 lines as you can with 5. So I think everything's important. To your point, you're just saying, okay, yeah, don't Macbeth the character that isn't Macbeth because they're not the story. But
Right.
nonetheless, the research, the time, the effort, all of those things are just as important and serious to that character as it is to the one who's got the camera on them.
It is, because they have to have a life, and that life has to be brought there. But in the same respect, it can't be fake plastic trees. You got to show up. You got to be able to be like, nobody wants to see Jack Nicholson shows up in a restaurant and the waiter comes up and he says, "Would you like cheddar on that?" No one wants that,
No.
because it's like, what the fuck is this guy doing? But you know what? It could be a waiter that fucking hates his job, and his wife's henpecking him, and he's fucking, cheating with another waitress at the thing, and he's like, oh my God, I hate this job, and he's got a head cold. All that stuff can go on internally, and you can bring it and do it. but it's milking that line. I just heard an interview. Gosh, who was it? Sonnenberg, I think it was, maybe on. Oh God, I can't remember who it was, but he was saying how something to the degree of like he just wants the actors to just say the line. Just Barry Sonnenfeld. He was just saying, just say the line, just go. Like let's go, get it out, say it. Because actors, man, we like to like sit on that line and suck the marrow out of it. But if it's written right, if it's funny, if it's dramatic in and of itself, all we got to do is bring the reality to it. Nobody gives two shits whether we're milking it. And that's the hard thing on the 5 and unders, especially when you audition for them, because you're only doing them because you want to like get in front of the casting person or get in front of the director. So they go, oh, this guy's actually pretty good. Let's bring him back for this thing or whatever. And I have gotten roles off of doing little roles. But if you go out there and you chew it up, not only are they not going to do that, they're going to get, this guy sucks, because he's trying to make something that doesn't exist. So it is a challenge in that you've got to bring something real to it without making it ponderous and like, oh my God, like I like to hear my own voice. It's like,
yeah, no. And I always wonder, like, like I say, everything I know from movies. So my idea of a casting room is very different than probably what a casting room is. But I always wonder why, like, are all casting directors just so monotone? Hey, Frank, what do you think about this situation? And then you're supposed to be Frank in your character. Like, wouldn't it help to pull the best out of somebody? That person working with somebody, like the casting directors involved in the scene, doing the scene work for the audition. Would that
the good casting directors are really good, and a lot of them are ex-actors, and a lot of them they're really actually not that way. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of great casting directors out there, and I'm not just saying that to go, there's a lot of great casting directors out there. Hire me. No, but there really are. There are a lot that were actors themselves, and they get it. You're talking about like people in the room that read with you. Like, yeah. I can tell you right now, post-COVID, we rarely get to read with anybody in the room. Our readers are our wife, our 14-year-old, my Labrador, the refrigerator. It doesn't matter because we're auditioning at home now. Everything is self-tape. So you don't have that reader with you in the room. But I'll tell you, even on the best projects now, the guy they have reading with you, they bring in actors. They bring in people that are very good, and they give you something. So that is not as much as what it used to be. And a lot of the really good casting directors will talk to you. They'll take time to talk to you. They'll explain to you what it is. They'll ask you if you have any questions.
Oh, nice.
They engage with you. So dude, it's getting a lot better, man. It's not like that cookie cutter thing like we see in La La Land. And there is elements of it.
Sure.
And elements that are like that too. When she's in there and she's like doing this wonderful performance and she's weeping, and then the woman is like knocking on the door with the stick. I've had those too, man, more than I care to admit, but I feel like it's not as much that as it used to be.
I just like, it's just so dead. And and I mean, it's made to be played that way. And my wife always tells me, she's like, that's not how real life is. Like, you need to go to Vegas. Vegas isn't like what you think. And I'm like, and then I went to Vegas, and now I go, I know where the stratosphere is. Like, you get those references. So I really do have a movie version of life. And that's where I think the romantic in us comes from.
And we never know, we think about Vegas and we see Vegas as, these schlocky old performers, and then you realize the killers came from Vegas. There's been a lot of cool things that came out of Vegas, so, but we do look at things that way, where we think, oh, it's like that, and it fits into that thing, and then we experience it and it's like, wow, this is totally different. I've done commercials that were so phenomenally artistic and cool, and the people cared so much. Are
we talking about Jim Beam?
Jim Beam was one of the most phenomenal experiences of my life. John Hillcoat, just great director. He was part of the Black Mirror, that series, I believe.
Yep.
Red Dead Redemption, all that stuff. He was involved in all of that.
Let me cut you off for a second for the listeners. So this is because we talked at the top of the show, guys, that everything that he's done, he's TV, film, commercial work, but I have cut cable out of my life. I'm 100% streaming now, unfortunately, because it's just so ad filled, and I only have so much time on this earth. Life is finite. So I'd rather see an ad for somebody else's film played in between my series than, another one for toilet paper, because everybody stole that shit during COVID and it still aggravates me, but that's a different story. But like, I saw this commercial, and here in Winnipeg, where I'm from, we play the commercial awards every year at the art gallery that is just up the street from my house. And it's like the Oscars of the commercial world. It's like the Cannes commercial thing. And I saw this commercial, and I was like, this is one of the most beautifully shot, artistically envisioned commercials I have ever seen. And Jim Beam is my brand. I drink Devil's Cut. Like, there's some upstairs right now. I am Jim Beam. So
before I got the commercial, I love Jim Beam. I do.
So how did this whole thing play out? Because it's not only just a commercial, guys. It's a Super Bowl ad. So it's one of the most watched commercials on the planet over and over and over again.
I will tell you, this is how crazy life is. I'll never forget. I was the audition for it was in Santa Monica, and I live right outside of Pasadena. For any of you non-LA folks out there, it's like we're talking about 30 miles of LA driving. So it's one of those LA days where, one thing happens and it's a chain reaction of like highway hell. So I was late. I was supposed to audition for one of the workers, not for Jim Beam. So I show up, and one of my buddies is he's running the, he's the runner at the audition. He's not making, he's the guy who runs the camera. He's not making any decisions, but I show up and I'm like, dude, I got like stuck and I got to hit another one after this. And he's like, well, your category's going, just, we're looking at the Jim Beams now. Just come in and just do this.
Do it. Yeah.
Literally 3 auditions, callbacks, a background check. You name it. I got cast in it, and it was absolutely just like, wow, I could not believe it, but it just, everything fell into place. And then we showed up the first day, we shot the interiors, and it was when the fires were going on out here. One of the many times that the fires were going on out here, but they built this entire set in Malibu near where they used to do MASH, where the MASH set was out there. And the whole thing burnt down. Fuck. So yeah, dude. So I'm like, oh man, really? So halfway in
part of the Jim Beam story?
It is. And that's what I was going to say. It's absolutely insane, but that's how it went.
Fuck.
So they rebuilt the whole thing up in the Disney Ranch, and we shot it. And John is a phenomenal director, super cool guy. I believe he's from Australia or New Zealand.
That's not a commercial. That's a vignette. That is a short. That is far beyond the realms of basic advertising.
And the man that shot it, the cinematographer Hoyte van Hoytema, who is like done every Christopher Nolan film that there ever was up for an Oscar, I believe, for Dunkirk and for Interstellar. Super cool. People throw the brilliant genius thing around, like this guy is a brilliant genius. I mean, he builds cameras. There's nothing this guy cannot do. He can direct. He's really a visionary guy. So him and John together, that's where it was just amazing. And the people from Jim Beam were phenomenal. They knew it was going to be a special commercial. I think it was 4 days in shooting the whole thing. And it was a great experience. And it was absolutely my favorite commercial to shoot, for sure.
Those kinds of commercials, because where I'm from, we have these things called heritage moments.
Mm-hmm.
And they're moments from Manitoba prairie life, because the history of Manitoba is it's full of Eastern European people, so like Polish, Ukrainian, German, Czechoslovakian, like anything that eats cabbage and dough and pierogi. Like that's what we are. We're a melting pot.
Cabbage and dough. I love it.
The Guess Who, like Burton Cummings, Randy Bachman, are from the north end of Winnipeg, right? So it's
PTO, baby. That was like love it.
That is a theme song in this town like you wouldn't believe. Go to a social, go to a wedding. There's always some taking care of business, but they tell the story of Manitoba. Like there's this one where this guy's husband, who they're living on the prairies, they're building like grass huts, and she says that she's smelling weird things, and it's the first surgery that was done in Manitoba to figure out someone was having a stroke and finding out what nerves talk to what part of the brain.
Oh,
And the big line is, "Doctor, I smell burnt toast." And we all in Manitoba know when like it's a Manitoba thing, and they have like there's maybe 10 or 12 of them. They were around when we were kids. They even remade one a couple of years ago when our football team, the Blue Bombers, they created a giant beer snake out of beer cups. It was like 60 feet long. So then
dude, I love it.
somebody,
beer
yeah, like a beer snake. I'll send you the link after. It's crazy. But they took the music and they made a new Manitoba heritage moment for the beer snake at the football game. Like
I don't love that.
but what I'm talking about is these moments, these Manitoba moments are done so well. They reenact them so well, and they're enjoyable to watch because they show part of your heritage, and they remind you of where something's from. But with your case, then there's this great bourbon at the end of it that you get sold on. So I just love how if you're going to advertise to us, do what you did, make a story.
Well, they, I mean, like, all I was the guy that showed up and did the role. I mean, they really put so much into this, and there was so much thought into the shots and in the set and the clothes, and all those clothes, by the way, were vintage clothes. They were all clothes that were pre-1920 clothes.
Wow. So they went.
So it was literally like with wardrobe. I mean, it was like there was people that were like with the historical society, like as we were putting them on, like going, please don't, like be careful as putting. I mean, these were like, everything about this was authentic, and it was done so incredibly well. I was so blessed to be a part of that, and I'm forever thankful. And it's so funny because last year I did a commercial for Maker's Mark, which I did not know, but Jim Beam actually owns Maker's Mark. And I think at the time I don't know if they put it together that I was the same guy, because I had a white beard in the commercial, and it was like a whole different type of a vibe, very hip and modern. Like this guy and his daughter are sharing a Maker's Mark, and he has this hip downtown apartment, and he's, playing records, and he's a hip guy with a hip daughter, totally different, modern setting, modern feel, different thing. But that was another one that I really thought was great. And I loved the director, and I loved Katie Reese was the girl who played my daughter, and she did a phenomenal job. The director was tremendous. And you can tell when you show up and it's something special, it's
all over you, man. Like you're stoic, and you're enjoying being part of a reenactment of a really great story with a really old company that makes it just looks fun, and for commercial work, it's so designed to be so like, buy this. That's just like, that's such a soft sell. And I think they can all be done like that. Like, give me an anthology of Jim Beam commercials with you as the Jim Beam guy. I'd just put those on the background.
Write it in, man. Let's go. Let's get it happening. Let's make that happen. Jim Beam for life. You never know, Michael. I mean, I did a commercial just a few months ago, right after game day, and it was, for a medical procedure. And the director on it, this guy, Stephen French, phenomenal guy. We were talking, he's from Bristol, England, and he's Welsh background, and I'm half Welsh. So we had, I'm not from Wales, but my family, Italian and Welsh. So we hit it off. We started talking, and anyway, he's going to direct and produce my next movie. We just ended up becoming, hitting it off, becoming friendly with each other, talking cinema. We both have amazing love for early 70s cinema, and we're discussing everything from French Connection to you name it. He worked quite a bit with Owen Wilson, and he worked with Wes Anderson. Nice. And I love both of those guys. So at any rate, point being, you never know when you show up on a set and you do something, who you're going to meet, what it's going to be, even if it's not maybe as epic as Jim Beam is in scope. You meet people, and it's so important to go and make whatever the situation is, whether it's a commercial for diabetes or it's Goliath. It doesn't matter, to go in with a positive attitude, to make it great for everybody that's there, that everyone's not, oh man, that guy was such a dick who played Jim Beam. You don't want that, not because you're running for office and you're shaking babies and kissing hands, but because it's just, you're supposed to make things better for people around you. And I've gone into everything that I do with that thought process in mind. Certainly, you never know. So for young actors and young filmmakers and young writers out there, all I can tell you is, whatever you do, whatever you show up to do, man, make it better for you being there. It should be a better experience that you were there and that you did it. And that's what I try to do. I don't always
dude, like it getting to know you today, it's evident that like a raising tide rises all ships, right? It's better to have one beer each than one guy with 6 beers, so, or 6 shots of bourbon in this case, but
exactly.
But I dig it. So yeah, let's shift into what I really want to talk about, because I want to give it a ton of time, because it's your newest thing and it was really fun to watch. You had sent me the invite. This is how this all started, with like, hey, let's talk about this new film I made, and I was like, yes, please, sure. And I felt super weird because I was like, how do I watch this? I'll pay for it if you want. Or it was just so weird because like we've had this imposter syndrome conversation earlier, and we have it a lot on, like, I have it a lot with a lot of people, because I think it's a thing that we all have in common, because you're trying to do a thing that is a homage to a real thing in life. And I think anybody in an artistic way, shape, or form feels a little bit like, what am I doing here? Depending on where you're going. So I asking you these questions, I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. I'm asking, because asking someone I know, it's very easy to do, right? Asking someone in my backyard, but we're perfect strangers. So I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. And you were so great.
You have a very good way of not, I don't feel like a stranger to you. And again, speaking with you, I feel like I've known you for a long time. You have a very easy person to talk to, and obviously a very bright guy. So ask away, man. I mean, you're making this very easy.
That's perfect. I get we'll put it up on the board. We have a board. I'll show you after.
Run that over now. Can you say it for my wife again, please?
You win. So game day is what I want to talk to you about, which is, like, I come from a divorced parent home. I come from a home that has animosity, and this is one of the best films that I have ever watched about family drama, all just erupting on the same day. But the genius of it is the allegory of football and competitive spirit and camaraderie and family all wrap into the same story. And I'll preface it, you can fill in the blanks where I'm wrong here, but it's the story of a family who's all got issue with each other in some way, shape, or form. And they're hard in the paint Philadelphia Eagles fans, and every Sunday is church. They meet the gravy. I love you're a New Jersey resident, and I'm a huge Food Network fan show, so I have learned that's what it's called. I always thought it was the sauce, but it's actually it's your gravy. And I was like, makes perfect fucking sense. And anyway, so it's a Sunday, and the game is about to start, and the volcano underneath this family comes to a giant eruption, and everybody goes at each other's throats. Is that a fair enough assessment of that?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Let's start with its inception. Where does this movie come from?
Well, it was one of those situations where, as I had said to you, Edgar Bravo, who is the film's director, and honestly, I will gladly say and proudly say, has been like a mentor to me in terms of throughout my life, even though we weren't like completely, we would go years without talking to each other or knowing what each other was up to. But he is a guy that I think is really, truly one of the brightest people I know, and really like you talk about a film historian and buff and understands it. At UCLA, he's done everything. So I had written a script that I had felt really good about, and I sent it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, this script is really good." And he didn't know at that time that I was writing. Again, we had done one thing many years ago together, And he's like, this is great. You know, your writing is really good. And we ended up talking, and he was like, you know, you should write a film about your family. And I said, well, you know, I don't know if there's enough there. We didn't really discuss the nuts and bolts of it, but we talked back and forth. We had a couple lunches together, and somehow the idea came up to make it about a Sunday watching the Eagles play Dallas, who is our hated rival. Just for you folks out there, to let you know how hard it is to be a Philadelphian, Dallas is our rival. We're not Dallas's rival. We're not big enough to be Dallas's rival. Washington is Dallas's rival. So this is the plight of being from Philly, okay? But anybody who's out there who's a Philly person like myself, we know we hate the Cowboys, and there is incredible emotions that occur on that Sunday when those Cowboy games are on.
Can I pause you for a second? I'm now drawing the link between Silver Linings Playbook, where that's the game that happens.
Yes, I believe it was Dallas. In terms of Silver Linings Playbook, I will say this. First of all, I love Silver Linings Playbook. I love the actors. I love the everything about it. The one thing I will say, the one difference is Silver Linings Playbook is an album that took a year to record in the best studio in the world, using the best equipment, bringing in ghost players to play the different instruments. You know, this is like Nevermind the Bollocks, Here Come the Sex Pistols. I mean, our movie is the punk rock version of being a Philadelphia sports fan. And,
Yes.
you know, it really, for me, probably one of the best moments about this is there's a terrific film critic in Philadelphia, Steven Silver, and he said basically, you know, that we got it, that we got what it's like to be truly a Philadelphia fan. And one other thing about game day, every actor is from Philadelphia, and those are real Philadelphia accents. This isn't somebody from Brooklyn or somebody from England or somebody from Queens that are doing Philly accents. This is the real Philly accent. So when we went about doing it, looking at the situation in terms of, okay, we're going to make it this Philly Dallas game. And when I had said that to Edgar, he's like, yeah, that sounds great. We started writing the total midst of COVID. We're all locked away. We're quarantined. And Edgar and I are writing every day. I'm writing, he's writing, we're writing together. We're going back and forth. We're kicking this thing back and forth. And I mean, when I tell you, Michael, when you talk about an obsession with writing, it was like, we were just so deep in it. And I'd watch a movie and I'd be like, Edgar, I watched this movie last night, watch this movie. And he'd, oh yeah, watch this movie. I watched it. And then we'd think about it and go back to the scenes. It was a nonstop process for, I would say, almost 6 months of writing. And then it just happened. We got the money that we needed to do to make it. The amazing thing about it was we had places like Pat's Steaks, P&S Raviolis, Primo Hoagies, all of these Sentinel iconic Philadelphia establishments, institutions that gave us money to do this film. That was like a total boon. John Paul Rice, our executive producer, is, you know, such a great guy and such a, you know, just a down to earth guy. And I talked to some of these people, then he talked to them and followed up, and it just came together. But to your original thing, the fact that it was a Dallas Eagle game, it was that Sunday. It was that Sunday that we circle twice a year on our calendar. That means way more to us than it should. Brings out all of these emotions. So it could not have been any other team.
Well, to have that's the juxtaposition of the brilliance that you did with football and family, and that game with that day, where like you've got two rivals on the field, you've got a family who are now rivaling with each other.
Right.
And there's just so much juxtaposition that is brilliant in how I like picking things up, because like I don't have a critic's mind. I'm such a fanboy that I come in with this from like a like a happy place, right? Like I'm a happy puppy, essentially.
Dude, man, I feel with you, man.
I get called a shill all the time because I'm like, no. We don't have to stand on some, like Kevin Smith, my guy, my favorite, my everything. without sounding like a stalker, always says you don't have to stand on the shoulders of somebody else to make something better. Like so I will love everything, but the fact that
A Jersey boy.
yeah, sure, yeah, I'll take the honorary status. It's just I loved how I picked it up. It was very well done. It was delivered in such a fun way that I was like, oh, that's smart. Like I just kept saying that's smart the whole time.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Well, that's a tribute to everyone in the cast, and certainly Edgar and John, and also Val McAdoo and Pete Pastiglione, who are both actors back there, but producers as well, and do a lot of stuff in that Philadelphia area. You know, they help so much bring these different cast people to it. And it was just, Michael, it was such a labor of love. You know, you hear people say that kind of stuff all the time, but truly it was just an amazing labor of love, how that all came together and those things occurred there, you know, that just seemed to fall into place as we went. And believe me, you're shooting mid-COVID. There's a lot of obstacles to jump over, man.
Making it the like, I mean, you're limited to what you can do, so I imagine you probably would have had to you might be wanting to include some more exterior shots, but using the Sunday family at the home where it happens, like that's believable. Everybody fighting in a house that they can't get away from, that you want to get the hell away from. And
Yeah.
and you so Edgar said, why don't you write a story about your life? You'd mentioned that. I can't help but sympathize and see, and I don't know if it's just like minds and stuff, but like this is semi-autobiographical. Is that safe to say?
It is safe to say. It is semi-autobiographical in that my parents do live with us. They're in their 80s. I am remarried. I've been with my wife now for 20 years. We have a younger son who's 14. He's not 7. But there's a lot of things too that weren't exactly like my family. I always say this, it is definitely a drama, not a documentary. Some things being, but I will say this, Michael, there's not a character in it or a circumstance in it that I either haven't experienced in my extended family, my nuclear family, or a very tight friend group.
Yeah.
So I can honestly say it's definitely 100% based on the truth, real people, real situations, not per se my exact situation, but we built on that. And we made it a point to
the amplification of maybe a more mundane real life scenario used to talk about this. Like, yeah, we're not tracing one's life, but I can't help but like for example, like the bickering family dynamic is brilliant, and the jabs that you pull at each other is brilliant, and it's in the way that I'm like, no, those are jabs that people pull at each other. So I can see it's not turned up so much that it gets lost in the amplification.
No, and it's real. And I mean, just 2 days ago, my middle son and I had a total
Spaz out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it occurs. And a lot of those lines were true to life lines that occurred and were in my life and that I remember happening. One thing I do want to say that is definitely an earmark of Edgar's films and Edgar's writing, and I like to think it is with myself as well, is so many times in so much film that we see today, it's like Dean's the bad guy. Dean's a bad guy. He does bad things. He's a bad guy. Michael's the good guy. Michael is good all the time, and he's good, and bad plays against good, and then, good wins or whatever happens. This is not about that. This is about people trying to figure it out. I mean, you can go way back and look at like Godard's Breathless or something like that, and look at that when you're seeing this guy like murders a cop in this movie, and you find yourself rooting for the guy halfway through the movie, and you're going, I'm rooting for this guy that killed this young cop. It's like, why am I rooting for him? Because I think that especially with French New Wave and a lot of those people, they got the fact William Friedkin, another guy, just
Yes.
so much early 70s where it's like, this is not an all bad guy. This is not an all good guy. And within our family dynamic, we thought it was important to say, Marco, the middle son, he's not all bad. He's not all good. He's making some bad decisions. He's doing some bad shit. He's doing some shit he shouldn't do. And then there's also some things he's got a point with. Same with my character, same with the wife, same with the ex-wife, same with the father, the mother. One thing I do want to say, Michael, that I think is super important with the film that we tried to get across. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. Some of us are very blessed in life to have these parents, even if you have one, who you have this relationship with where you feel like you have nothing to prove, nothing whatsoever to prove. You can just stand up and shine and be who you are and do your thing. I have loving, amazing parents, great parents. I love them dearly, and they've done nothing but their best. And I think they've done a great job. But I always felt this need personally to prove something to my dad. I had to prove to him that I could do this, or I had to prove to him that I could do that. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I was like, I don't need to prove this to my dad. I don't need to prove it. I just need to do my thing and shine. In game day, everybody's trying to prove something. Everybody's trying to show, hey, I had to do it this way. It had to be this way. No, there's so much of that going on, and there's so much generational stuff that's going on. Prove it to my mother, prove it to my kid. That is something that I feel most of us, unless we're very, very blessed, unless we're in that very small percentage, we're in that spot. We're trying to prove something to ourselves or to somebody that's out there, and that's no way to be happy. But unfortunately, we all navigate those waters often.
Those conversations, and I said, I come from a family where I had parents pulling at me from either side, and it was awkward when my stepmom would show up, and like those aren't things that. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I've recently come around to this. I fell ill to the blockbuster big tent pole mass marketed campaign movies, and I got lost along the way. I've recently found myself in the last year where I'm like, I want story. I want relatable ideas. I want some conflict that isn't too out of bounds from what I can experience. And you're showcasing those things in so many interesting ways, and you're giving depth to characters. Like your opening sequence with Val sitting on the bed as the mom, just waking up and like not being happy. And you can feel that she's not happy. That right there is giving a layer to a character that as soon as she speaks, we know something is bothering her from the start of this film. And it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And you're waking up, and Zach wakes up to mom and Zach and dad are bickering. Like it just this right from the alarm clock going off. This is building, and that's how it builds with people in your real life, where you've got issues and you're making mistakes. Like it just builds over time. So you're using the length of the film as well as each character, and was it Marco? Marco was the trumpet son, and then Vinny was the
Older son.
Older son, yeah. Your conversation with Vinny in the yard, where Vinny gets real with you after, and finally like talks to you as like Zach is like, okay, maybe I am making some mistakes here, and maybe Marco is also making some mistakes here with drug use, and like there's so many combative, relatable relationships, and the genius part of quarter one, quarter two, halftime, quarter three, like building like a Christopher Nolan film, right? Where you're like, okay, we know the fourth quarter of any football game is where it's going to get really intense and something's going to happen. One's going to win, one's going to lose. So you use the length of a football game to basically showcase the story, and those things I'm like, aye man, like it was fun.
Thank you, man. It was one of those situations where it really absolutely just, it kind of wrote itself in that respect. There were things that we definitely were aware of that we wanted to go there with it, but it is, when it's all said and done, as you were just alluding to earlier, when you're dealing with step parents, when you're dealing with siblings, when you're dealing with, it's all about your own realization of self within this family dynamic, and to thine own self be true. that's a hard thing to do, to actually be true to yourself without controlling somebody else, without thinking, I got to do this, or I'm going to break this person's heart, or I've got to do this because this is my responsibility, or this is something that is a very, very difficult family dynamic. It's very hard, and knowing how you fit in it, and how the family dynamic in some ways changes greatly. In other ways, it never changes. It stays the same. I grew up an only child. I did not have brothers and sisters.
I get it.
You too. Okay, so that's a strange dynamic in and of itself. It's like you're the center of the universe, you're the greatest ever, and you're not quite ever getting it done the way that you're expected to get it done. It's like, aren't you president yet? What the hell's going on, man?
Yeah, all the weight's on you.
All the weight's on you, and there's nothing to diffuse it. There's no going to your sister and saying, hey, like, mom and dad, what the hell's going on? That doesn't exist. So in this family, with the Fortes, there is similarities to our family in that it is an older brother, a middle brother, and a younger one. But again, you've got this dynamic where, if you notice, Marco is always saying to Zach, you just wait and see. I'll take care of the whole family. I'll do this. Well, that's no different than what Zach's doing. He's revisiting the exact same issues that Zach has in the first scene in the kitchen, where Zach is saying to the father, don't worry about it, I'll take care of you. It's like, we have to look out and be there for each other. But when it's all said and done, we can't fix things for other people. We're not the fixer, and that was one of the great things with Zach. And Zach's always trying to fix everything, fix this thing, fix that thing, staying with Jamie.
No, you are the mom's the matriarch, right? Like she holds court like any true Italian family, right? Like it's, but you're the people pleaser. You're trying to make everybody happy. You're trying to do right by everybody, and it's coming to a hilt, right? Like the pressure's financially of making your career work, and then combating with your son and having I was once great, and I might be envious of my child who has a second chance and is ruining it, and like there's all of these conversations that are happening in such a digestible manner because it's all family, right? It's not on some space station. It's not in some, Middle Earth. Like it is a digestible, approachable thing. And I wonder, like, did that have any effect as the filming went on? Because where did you find everybody? Because you guys, to be able to play a family that loves each other, that's I imagine is easier than a family who despises each other, right? Because love is a very easy emotion to convey. It's not something that I'm assuming everything I know from movies, but hate, contempt, those things. If you don't have anything for somebody, harder to find. So how did you create in this dynamic this perfect amount of animosity and love for each other?
Yeah, that is really that's a great question. I think the main thing was, first of all, again, I go back to the script. We really worked hard on having those moments where everybody at some point, the love came through and the conflict was there. Then I think one thing when you're dealing with Edgar as a director, he will not deal with one ounce of bullshit. As an actor, there's acting tricks. If he sees the acting trick, he's like, no, stop, we got to go. He will call bullshit on that when that happens. So I think we had a lot of real moments. I think the other thing was right from the get-go, and this is like very odd that it went down this way, but literally we came together and did this film, and it was like, we knew we were doing something that was like, this is something that could be really cool. And we are all Philadelphians, and we're all in this boat, and we all understand, all of us have these family dynamics. Every single person has a very interesting, challenging, and beautiful family dynamic that came into it. Like we all do, Michael. Every one of us have that. And I feel like every person was willing to bring that honestly to the table. And I think we saw each other as actors doing it. And I think that Edgar was really supportive and informative as a director in letting us do it. The script was there, and we fell in together. So it felt familial right from the get-go. And that was
there, man. Like it reads, it's on the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And I feel like we jumped in. We made it in under 4 weeks, and we immersed ourselves in it. We were filming 6 days a week, and we were in it. And when we weren't in it, we were sitting around a table talking about it. And it was just the kind of experience that you can only have with a certain kind of group of actors. And that's what we had. We had those actors, we had the director, we had the producers. It was, and the terrific cinematographer, Lafferty is.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to mention about Lafferty, the lighting and the shots. It's very beautifully shot. It's misty. It's got this cool tone to it. It really, like it's almost, I don't know if it's haunting. Like it leaves something, like there's an emptiness to how it was shot, and it adds to the total overall tone of the film.
Yeah, and Lafferty did a phenomenal job with that, where you feel each character's solitude, even though he's sitting in the midst of this entire family. There is an element of solitude with each character where you feel that going on, and Lafferty did a phenomenal job at that. And I'll tell you, as you said earlier, Philadelphia, the people that we met in there, Val and Pete did a great job securing locations. We had options, and that process of putting it in that house and keeping it in that house was a concerted decision, not because of lack of ability to go to other locations, as much as it was like, we're going to keep the lid on that pot, and we're going to keep turning it up and up and up and up. And we've had people who have loved the film who have said, I love the film, but it physically was making me sick at my stomach. Because they were feeling that pressure of what that family was feeling in Sunday. We feel it, right? I mean, we're thrown in with our family a lot of time. You can't divorce your son. Your mother can't divorce, their daughter. There's these situations where you're in it and you're deep in it, man. And you just can't walk away. It's like you're in it for life. You can try, even if you walk away. So I'm never going to talk to my father again. Okay.
But the irony is the only one who gets away is your ex-wife, Teresa. Like, she's the one who escapes.
Right. Because when it's all said and done, and there's the key thing, is a decision has to be made. Why am I keeping you here? Why are you here? Are you here for me? Are you here to make me feel like I'm doing something good? Is that fair to you? Do you deserve more than the love I can give you? Because the love I can give you is not really the love you deserve. You deserve something more and something stronger.
It was a very adult, for lack of a better word, conversation to end a potential rekindling. It was a very civil exchange, and those are not like. But I've been an asshole, so I deserve it. I've never been yelled at.
Haven't we all, Michael?
But I mean, it's just not how in your mind it plays out. It plays out mature. It plays out communicative. Like it's heartbreaking at the same time, and there's a loss of romance, but it's not. There's a scene in oh God, it's with Owen, Julia Roberts, Natalie Portman, Jude Law, and Close, I think it is.
Glenn Close?
No, not Glenn Close. The movie's called Closer.
Oh, I haven't seen that movie. I don't know that one.
There's a fight scene between Owen, not Owen Wilson, the English Owen, the one who was in Clive Owen. That's the one I want. So it's the four of them.
Better known as English Owen.
Yes, English Owen. And but there's a fight between him and Julia Roberts' character, and it's the fight that happens when you confront somebody on cheating. And it's the most realistic fight I've ever seen on screen, because it uses words and phrases and sentences that you would never want to ask someone who just broke your heart. You would never want to know what they felt like inside you.
Gosh, I got to see that. That sounds really good, man.
It's a very intense movie about relationships. I went to it on a first date. That's why it's funny to me. Like that, the whole dinner.
I just like the pledge on our first date.
Oh, those are great choices.
Romantic son of a bitch I am.
No shit. So let's go see the Scarlet Letter, honey. Anyways, that conversation feels real and awkward between you and Teresa trying to end it. Like, it just has all of the things, but it just ends nicely, is what I'm saying. Where normally it ends in a screaming match, and that was a nice thing to see. That was a change from normal storytelling.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate you seeing that and feeling that, and that's how we felt too, because it really was that moment where you look at somebody and you're like, first of all, you love them, but you're not in love, and is it fair to keep dragging them through this situation when you're not what they need, because they need to be loved in that way, or they shouldn't be in a relationship at all, but they don't need to settle. And the thing about that in that situation that I think really was the hardest thing for Zach, and why there was so much emotion in it, was because when you love somebody and you're going, I gotta let this person go, but I love them and I'm trying to always fix things, and God, I still want to be around to fix this person's life, but in trying to fix their life and be a part of it, I'm ruining their life. And then you're in a really tough spot. Like, what do? You're in a spot where you feel damned if you do and damned if you don't. But at that stage of the game, he knew that the jig was kind of up.
Yeah. Well, and that's the hook, right? That's the dragging somebody along, and that's a part of life that we don't like talking about, whether it's on screen. Like, it's either falling in love and meet cutes and this big bombastic over the top love, which I may have reenacted a couple times in real life scenarios. But but that's where we pull from, right? Because it looks like it works.
Right. Absolutely.
But we don't see the hook and the dirtiness and the selfishness and all of those things that play out, because then when it ends in this equally bombastic fight, and then they meet up in the end and it's happily ever after. We skip the coming back to each other a few times. We skip being on the hook with each other, and those are real life messy conversations that it's very nice to see on screen, because it's like, oh, I recognize that. I've been there, and it made me crawl. Like, Teresa had me crawling up the back of my chair, like just the desperation that she had for Zach's character, and just hoping, and like she did a really good job at showing a weak woman who was still in love with her ex.
Yeah, no, Val did a great job with it, and she's one of those rare actresses that have that have vulnerability and toughness, and both of those things. She has it as a person, she has it as an actress, and the thing with in portraying in where the spot where Jamie was at, she also had that other thing where she had the kid. And what am I modeling for my kid? What am I saying to my kid? Settle, settle because this is the best you can do. Not because there was anything wrong with Zach. The only thing wrong with Zach for Jamie was Zach didn't love Jamie the way Jamie deserved to be loved, the way all of us deserve to be loved deeply and real and for who we are. Again, and we go back to thine own self be true. Zach, be true. Do you love this woman that way? No, you don't. Well, then what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
What are you doing? For her, to thine own self be true. Do I deserve to be loved? Do I deserve to have more? Do I really deserve to be loved, or do I deserve to be in this relationship that we're kind of plodding along and we'll get through it? Like she says in the scene, we've made a safe life together. But let's face it, we're not here to make safe lives together. Safety, it's great, but it's an illusion. When it's all said and done, who the hell knows? Anything can happen at any moment of any day. What we're really here to do is to be honest with each other and tell each other the truth, especially people in our lives who we love. And that's what it's all about. And sometimes when you tell people the truth, it's not what they want to hear. John Paul Rice, who is the executive producer on it, he has a good quote. I'm paraphrasing him, but basically his quote is to this extent, where it's better to be divided for the right reason than to be united for the wrong one.
Yeah,
and that's a big part of what exists in this movie, is like people coming to that place and understanding it.
Yeah, no, I truly enjoyed it, and I was crying with laughter in some scenes. I was like, my heart, I sympathize with Zach's character in a lot of ways. Like I had seen myself in a lot of things, just trying to do the best, but getting in your own way, sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's the tough thing. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's not always easy for any family member. And we tried to pull no punches. We really tried to be honest with it. And I feel like we gave people an honest opinion of where we see family and what family is about. And we're very proud of it.
Oh, your your choice in parents. Those do you watch Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix at all? Do you know about this show?
I know about it, but I have not seen it.
Okay, well the
Oh, wait, no. You're talking about it used to be I'll have what Phil's having.
yeah, exactly.
James Feed Phil.
Yeah.
I love the parents.
Okay, you're
I
right.
love them.
Okay,
No, what you're saying.
and knowing that he created Everybody Loves Raymond with his parents in mind, and
Right.
I'm gonna guess that living with your parents, like what is it like? Like you're casting parents for your character, sure, but now you're casting actors who are playing people that are close to. Yeah, they're not strangers in your life. They're your family. So how do you get the surreality of, all right, how do I find my father in somebody else but not make it weird?
That all goes to John Paul and Edgar. Definitely, they handled most of the casting in the situation, and they would run things by me and say, well, what do you think of this person, or what do you think of that person? There were so many good choices, but I can honestly say that the choices that they made, the people that they chose, I were so spot on. I just think they're such terrific actors and such terrific people. In terms of making the decision to make it like my parents or not, I will say this: the multi-generational puzzle. This is a new puzzle again, man. I mean, this is something that existed quite a bit in the 30s and the 40s. Grandpa and grandma lived at home.
Yeah.
Mom and dad went out working. The kids were there. They stayed after school with grandma and grandpa. That was part of the way that life used to be. Then that all went away. Grandpa and grandma lived here. You lived here with your kids, not even in the same state sometimes. So this multi-generational world, this was like, we didn't even think about it. It wasn't like we were writing and going, oh, let's write to this demographic. But I'll tell you, it was definitely a challenge to try to make sure that each one of those generations were respected and understood for what they did, for what they tried to do, and what they were to each other. So in casting the people that we cast, one thing we wanted to make sure was they had that experience, that vast experience as humans, not just as actors. And they're terrific actors who have a phenomenal resume themselves, but that they had that resume as parents, they had that resume as family members, and
they could bring it to set, and it would leak off them and create the ambiance.
Yeah, because these are complicated characters. Like my dad is, though Ben in the movie is not exactly like my dad, but my dad was like corporate executive. I mean, he was up and down the corporate food chain. I can remember when we were in an amazing place, and then I can remember when we were living in a shitty 2-bedroom apartment, and it was like up and down and riding that train, and the things that my dad had to go through with his father, who had tremendous expectations of him, which we allude to in the script, but we didn't feel like we had to say more than it, because Ben's character speaks to it when he says, do not bring him up, because it was the pressure that came from that father. I didn't experience that. My grandfather with me was like, oh, you're going to be president. You're the greatest. Whatever you do is fantastic. My father was like, you're going to be president. What do you mean you're not president? You suck. You're a failure. You're terrible. I didn't have that with my grandfather. So Ben had that bridge thing, the father character in the movie, where he had to like not do that and not be that guy to his son. There's a lot of father-son dynamic in this movie, and that was a gigantic part of it. Is that Tony Devon, the character, the guy who played the character Ben, who's a terrific actor, really brought that, an executive who's gambled money away on the stock market, and now they're in trouble. Now they're living with their son and his wife, and the only thing he can still play is play the game, gamble on the game, because there's no stock market money left to make. It's a very difficult place for a man of that generation to be.
Yeah, because it was don't show any emotion. Don't, like, it's all bury it deep down, right? And yeah, no, and those are the little. I love a good show don't tell, right? Like you can allude to it in dialogue, or you can show me something without telling me. And there's a lot of moments where the camera goes long, and those they come at the beginning or the end, the pensive moments before, or the body language before. Like it's all wrapped into these characters in a lot of different ways. Like there's so much going on in allegory in such a simple story, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it's
No, it is. No, you're
a
right.
great way of telling it without muddying the waters and getting too far off track. And then you're like, well, what are you trying to tell me? What am I supposed to be experiencing? Like it's easy to do. Your football love goes pretty far back. If I read a blurb about you in the package you sent me, your grandfather has something to do with the Philadelphia Eagles prior to the Eagles being the Eagles. Am I
Yeah,
on that?
he played for the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, who became the Philadelphia Eagles. They were the semi-pro team that all those players ended up being the Eagles eventually. So he was on that team, did not become an Eagle, but we're talking about around 1933, which is the year that my mother was born. This is my father's father that we're talking about. So that was the end of his football thing once he got married and had my dad, and that was his football background. My dad played for Trenton State and Temple in Philadelphia. So he was a football player. I played football, as we talked about, small but slow, not a lot of football future. So through the years, one of my straight jobs was actually coaching high school football, which I did for almost 15 years on and off. That was my straight job for a long time. Which was
I feel dwarfed in comparison to my football. Like we have CFL, which I know you guys are like, it's almost football.
there's a lot of good football players in the CFL.
We get your cuts that are still really good football players. They just like there's such a small amount of room in the NFL to get into nowadays. I'm a proxy person that when they come up here, like we just won the Grey Cup, and I think we're 30-40% of our team is from the South.
And you get on, I am truly an Eagles fan, and we're playing tomorrow. We're playing against Tampa Bay, so this is like big week.
Big deal.
Yeah, but our one of our best players, one of our linebackers, Alex Singleton, was the defensive player of the year for the CFL just 2 years ago, and now he's a massive player for the Eagles. So there's a lot of great players that come from the CFL. So no, CFL's cool.
Yeah,
I Warren Moon came from the CFL back in the day.
Yep. And Dwayne the Rock Johnson played for Calgary Stampeders after he left Miami.
There you go.
It's a highway between countries that like the biggest names have traveled through, but there's just no attention on it for some reason. It's like, oh, when Warren Moon played up here, no big deal. Warren Moon now, like that name just echoes through football legacy. The reason I kind of wanted to tie this in was because what's it like taking this movie back home? Like it being, me seeing it up here, I see a great film. So I'm just getting 1 degree of game day, right? I'm seeing what for the everybody outside of Philly, but for home, what was the experience like coming off this film and taking it around and telling everybody about it back there?
Well, it's been one of the most awesome experiences of my life. I mean, first of all, my wife and my kids had never been to Philly, but my wife and my kids are all diehard Eagle fans and Sixer fans and Philly fans. So our whole life living in Los Angeles is still immersed with Philadelphia culture. So going back there and doing it, smelling the smells that I grew up with, being in the area that I grew up with, the accent, which again, like I tell you, nobody gets the Philadelphia accent but Philadelphians. We know when it's for real and when it's not for real. The whole immersion into that world. There's a store back there called Wawa, which is like it's like 7-Eleven on steroids. That's the best way I can describe it. But it's just amazing. Every aspect of it was a complete reconnection for me, grounding. Being there was just, I mean, it was absolutely a beautiful place to be, dealing with the other actors and the co-producers on it, Val and Pete. Um, it was just amazing. I mean, being back there, we couldn't have shot this anywhere else. And I'll tell you something, Michael, we were originally going to do this as a Philadelphia family that was transplanted to Atlanta and was doing a lot of what my life has been, which was being in another place, but bringing Philadelphia to where we were. And it
Sure, yeah.
just, as you know, thank God it went the way that it went. It ended up happening in Philadelphia, and the whole thing went down in Philadelphia. And it was just like, I couldn't imagine it being any other way. And so many people in Philadelphia helped us. And whether it was catering or whether it was locations or whether it was, whatever it was such a communal vibe, man. Everybody cared so deeply about it. It couldn't have happened if it wasn't in Philadelphia. I mean, it had to be there. So it was
Well,
magic.
for a city that I don't know, is there a lot of filming that's done in Philly? Because that if not, that kind of noise creates a shuffle in the community, and if it's showing off the community, that's like there's a recent Ice Road is the film that was shot with Liam Neeson, and it was shot here. And Winnipeg plays the backdrop to it. It's not Winnipeg doubling as Chicago. It's Winnipeg being Winnipeg. And
Right.
so when Liam Neeson says we're going from Winnipeg to Thompson, you get a sense of pride, and
Right.
because your place is your place. So I can only imagine having home court advantage and having all of these
That's the
people,
way to,
right? Like
yeah.
because if you're trying to be Philly in Atlanta, okay, you can do it, but the love and the fact that people go, well, this is our town being represented, so we need to represent our town. Like real life has to be real life in that scenario, because if it's
Yeah,
not, then it's a falsehood.
absolutely. And it's our town and our people and our heritage and our accents and our social mores and every aspect about it. Um, it could not have been done anywhere remotely in the same way, and been as successful in my book if it was anywhere else, even if it was about Philadelphia being transferred to LA or transplanted to Atlanta. It could not have been the same. From the minute we got there, because the actors were all Philly actors, and we shot it in Philly, so it enabled us to hire Philly actors and be in that world, and being in a house that's a Philadelphia house. That house is in Wellingford or Swarthmore, right outside of Philly there. And there's a certain vibe and feeling to houses back there. It's different. It's got its own thing. We could not have reproduced that somewhere else. We could not have gotten that aspect of it. Just the characters, like the guy that drives the Uber, the guy in the bar, like these people are really Philly people, and there's a flavor to it, and you just can't change it. I mean, I'll give you an example. Going back to something you talked about earlier, and again, a brilliant movie. In fact, our co-producer Pete Bastiglione was in Silver Linings Playbook. He played, yeah, he's in the scene at the bar. He's the lawyer who Bradley Cooper is like, he's trying to hit up on Jennifer Lawrence, and he's like, "Go ahead, take her away from me." Yeah. So, but I think other than Pete, very few people in that movie are actually Philadelphians. Now, when you watch that accent and you see people do it, I mean, I can't speak to, I'm sure you can as a Canadian, when someone is from Canada, you could probably, even if they're trying to cover their accent or whatever, or trying to do a Canadian accent, when it's authentic, when it's there lurking beneath or behind something else. For these people doing this Philly accent, the way you talk, the way insults come out, the way affection shows itself in a backhanded compliment, this is Philly. And there's no way that you can do that other than in that city with that mindset and that accent and those people that get that gallows style of humor, the approach to life, the viewpoint of I'm not good enough, but I am good enough, and you should just pay attention to me and stop worrying about New York. We're what's important.
No, totally, man. Like, yeah, it's a love letter. It's a fantastic story. Where can people see it? Like, where is this available to be seen so that everybody can get? Because I love talking about it, but they need to see it to really understand it. Because the big twist at the end that we can't talk about,
No,
really clinches like it really does tie the room together.
Yeah, I mean, like when Zach's character finds out, they find out that Rosebud was a sled. It just changes the entire, like, who knew that it was going to happen that way?
Oh, Christ. Okay, citizen.
Listen, Zach. Okay, well, you can go. It's on Amazon USA and Vimeo. Easy way to go to it is you can go to www.gamedaythemovie.com. Again, that's www.gamedaythemovie.com, and there's links to rent it or buy it, and they're all there. And we would love for as many people to see it as possible, because we really feel like we're proud of it. And you do a lot of stuff in life, and every now and again you do something that you feel really, really good about.
I can tell you that your episode posts will have the link embedded to that website. So anybody who just clicks on our post and goes through our link in our bio, it'll take you right to Game Day's website, and then you can just click and buy it and watch it right there. So
well, thank you. Hey, we appreciate it. We want you all to go there. And Michael, I want to thank you for having me. You are absolutely a treasure, dude. I really appreciate talking to you. You're a good man and a bright guy, and funny too, man.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not going to let you go just yet. We'll sign off with our listener here, because I told you, I said my New Year's resolution was to keep it short in the beginning and keep everybody on the time that I promised. So we're gonna keep both of those. You're the first one that's getting this treatment, so it will be historic. Will it continue? Who knows? But Dean, yeah, no, thank you, dude, for your kind words, man. Honestly, like it's great to have a fantastic exchange with a perfect stranger, because that just means that you're gonna get another email from me being like, "What are you doing? Come on the show, talk with the rest of the guys, have some fun with us. We'll all have like we'll expand, and we'll get into more film stuff, because that's we want it to show the world what Game Day is and who you are first. Now that they know you, we'll bring you back for the geek.
They can get just as sick of me as my family does.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to another Reel Debaters production. This was a pleasure for me to give you Dean Simone today. As he mentioned, go to the link in the bio. Go to the show notes in this episode. It will all be there. It'll be super easy to figure out. Just make sure you're ready to laugh, ready to cry. It will pull at your heartstrings in so many wonderful ways. Stick around for the end credits. That'll be where, if this is your first time and you would like to know more about the Reel Debaters universe, or how to follow us, all that stuff that's shameless and promotional that I hate doing, but it's a podcast. So just listen to that at the end. And yeah, I have been Michael Petro. My guest has been
Dean Simone. Thanks for having me, Michael. I surely appreciate it.
Anytime, dude. Hang around one more second. Ladies and gentlemen, watch all the movies. We're gone. He's going to go get ready for a Philadelphia Eagles game tomorrow, and I'm going to go play more games. Go Eagles!
Go Eagles!
Ladies.
And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, another Reel Debaters production is in the can. Thank you so much for pressing play. If this is your first time, specifically more so, if this is your second or third, triply, thank you to you, whatever the hell that means. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, another Reel Debaters production is in the can. Thank you so much for listening. If this is your first, second, third, fifth, 20th time, thank you so much. But thank you to the first timers, the ones here who pressed play for the first time and took a gamble on us. If you like what you heard today, the easiest thing to support the show is just to subscribe. Hit the like button, the follow button, whatever's in your podcast player. make it so that we're always there every Wednesday for you, okay? That would be huge. If you want to stay in touch with us, if you want to follow us, there's a couple ways to do that. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. We're slowly migrating to YouTube by putting all of the things we've ever put on video onto that site. There's some surprises coming this year that happened a while ago, but I felt needed to be shared because they're part of the Debaterverse. So the YouTube page is coming. But if you want to follow us, it's at Reel Debaters Pod on Twitter and Instagram. It's the Reel Debaters Podcast on TikTok. All of the links, all of the one-click away things are in the show notes that you've just listened to. So if you want to follow us there, that would be great too, because then you get to stay in the know of all the things that we do and what we're going to try to do this year and what we've done in the past, so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's how you stay in touch with us. If you want to contact us, it's thereeldebaters@gmail.com. All the spelling for all these things is REEL to keep with the title of the show. So you can send an email to us there, request an episode, want to call out one of us for being a goofball. There's places to do that as well too, like the Reel Debaters website. You can email us, or you can go straight to the website, rate us in Podchaser. It's reeldebaters.ca. And if you really, really liked what you heard and you want to support the show in some fashion that requires you spending money, well, we got a couple ways for you to do that as well too. You can buy our merch at the Prop Shop. It's a store through Threadless, and it's online, and you can order stuff. We've got tons of stuff. We've got our mass debater wear there. It's our signature, original, and only line. It's our logo on everything. So you can support us that way. Go to the merch tab in the show notes, or if you just got a buck and you're like, hey, I want to give you a buck and donate it to your cause, there is a tab in the show notes as well too that says donate to the Debaterverse, I think. And if you click on that, it takes you to a donation page where you can donate like $1, $3, and $5, and you'll get something for your $1, $3, or $5. Any more than that's just ludicrous. Luda. So yeah, that's just kind of what I wanted to tell you, that what I said at the end of the show. This is what you should listen to, because this is all about who we are, and now that we've gotten to where we are, we want to interact with you guys more. So these are the ways to do so. This is the way to stay in touch with us. Thank you to everybody again who's listened to the show. Again, you pressed play, you took a chance. That's cool. So without further ado, this is where I said I would talk more, so it's eggs on your face. No, I got nothing else for you. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week, and watch all them fucking movies. Bye-bye.